Hello and welcome back. So in this tutorial here we're going to look at skinning, which is the joining of the mesh and the skeleton together. Now we will be going on to do far more work with this mesh and adding more detail and sculpting it, etc. But for now we're just going to go through the technique of joining them together. So the first thing I want to do is just have a look at this mesh. It still has a mirror modifier. So if I go into edit mode, I've really only got half of a model. So I'm going to run into problems if I attach the skeleton to this. Now it will work actually. Blender will understand that there's two sets of geometry, etc. But it's kind of good practice to apply the mirror modifier before we do this. I can't apply it now because I'm in edit mode. It'll give me an error. So I can only apply it in object mode. So we'll apply the mirror modifier. And now we're going to go through the process of connecting the mesh and the skeleton. It's quite a straightforward process. You can do it manually and it's quite laborious and long, but we will look at it because it's important that you know how to do that. But at the moment we're going to use the automated process. So the order of selection is very important. So it's mesh first, then hold down the shift key and right click on the skeleton. If you don't do it in that order, it won't work properly. So then control P and you get this menu here. If you've selected them in the wrong order, you won't get this menu. And this is the option we're going to take, which is with automatic weights. So now it appears that nothing has happened, but what's actually happened is, if I go here, we have all these things called vertex groups. Now before I've done that this little box here would have been empty, but now it's got tons and tons of vertex groups, and each group is sort of associated with one of the bones. So let's just see if this works. I'm going to right click on the skeleton and I'm going to go into pose mode. I'm going to see if there's any errors in our assigning of vertices to bones. So I'm going to press G here with this one. This is always a good one. So we can see immediately from the hands that there are vertices that haven't been assigned. And if I select here at the feet and go G, okay, so that looks good. And go G. Okay. And we can immediately see the problem, which is that there are vertices associated with these IK bones that shouldn't be. So that's easy enough to fix. So I'm going to press A to select them all, and then I'm going to go Alt or Alt G, which is restore position, restore rotation. And then we'll go back to object mode, select the mesh, and we'll go into edit mode on the mesh. I'm going to press Alt A to deselect everything, and I'm going to press this foot IK bone, and I'm going to go select, and we can see that these vertices here have been associated with this bone, this IK bone, and the IK bone shouldn't have any vertices associated with it. So it's going to press remove and then deselect. And we'll do the same with the other bone. So we've selected foot IK.or. We'll go select and then remove. Now I'm going to go into object mode. Whoops, select the skeleton and then go to pose mode. And see, now when I move this, is the foot still assigned? And it is. So I can move my foot and I'm not leaving behind any geometry. So I want to do the same up here at the hands. So I'm going to select go to object mode, select the mesh, and then go into edit mode, and just make sure nothing is selected. So Alt A, and then we're going to find the other IK bones, which are the hand IKs. So press hand IK, select. You can see this geometry here selected, and I go remove, and then the other hand IK bone, select, and then remove. So you may have, when you do this, you may have other errors depending on how you've made your character. You may have geometry, for example, that's not assigned. So I could take this bone here and hit assign, and then this vertex would be assigned to that bone, and every time it moved, this vertex would move. So sometimes you want to subtract selections by using remove, or add in additional vertices by hitting assign. Okay, so now let's see what happens when we try and pose this character. So I'm going to select the skeleton, I'm going to go into pose mode, and see if I can move my hands. I can, if I can bend at the waist a little bit, tilt my head, bend forward a little bit. And as we discussed in class, this is sort of a mixture of forward kinematics, so each individual bone rotating, and then inverse kinematics, where you are using the fact that we have chains of bones that can be dragged sort of backwards. And there's a way to fix this. We're not going to worry about it now. There's a thing called, you can have a bone target. So if I select the IK bone and I look at its constraint here, it's got a pole target, so I can actually stick a bone out in front. So this will always point at it, so I don't get that sort of cross-legged effect. But we can fix it by hand, so we won't worry about it too much for now. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my armature and turn off in front, so we can see the mesh, and we can see that we have full full control over posing this character as naturalistically or otherwise as we would like. That's a pretty interesting stance. Someone's got either excellent posture or crazy posture. Okay, so that's all we are really looking to do in this tutorial is to take the skeleton and attach it to the mesh so that when I move the skeleton, the mesh moves as well. Now we will again look at more advanced ways of doing this using a technique called weight painting, so you can have more subtle sort of animation sort of effects, so you don't end up with these sort of kind of errors in armpits and elbows and knees. You can get a lot of compression when you animate, so things can get smaller as bones get closer together. But we'll look at that a bit later on. We'll just leave that for now, and hopefully this is something we'll do in about 2 weeks in class.